Like to call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. Would you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chris, would you take the roll? Yeah. Hey, Chris, could you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Detzel?
Here.
Mr. Yoshimura?
Here.
Ms. Bradley?
Here.
Mr. Gilbert?
Here.
Mr. Detzel?
Here.
Okay, tonight we have a special presentation with our work study program.
She's going to speak right over.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Is this on? No. Oh, it is? Okay. I'm Heidi Stickney. I am the Assistant Director of Curriculum and Special Education, and I would like to welcome all of our students, our teachers, and our parents who have come and family members who've come and joined us this evening. We are going to be talking tonight and give you kind of an overview of our work study program and how we prepare some of our students through multiple opportunities to get work experience, get out into the community, and be prepared for life after school. So I'm going to introduce Darcy Stuchel. Darcy's our work study coordinator, and she's going to introduce our students and some of their families and give you an overview of all of the great things that we do.
Thank you. The Northwest Local School District Work Study Program allows students with disabilities to learn work skills through integrated community work experiences. We currently have 14 job sites throughout the community who allow our students to come into their businesses for approximately 2 hours a week to not only practice specific job tasks, but to practice skills that are learned in the classroom in authentic situations as part of their transition to work experience. We also provide opportunities for students within the school building, such as the Northwest, or the Coleraine Coffee Cart, represented by Megan Geiger and Ralph Creekmore, who came tonight to make coffee for you guys. Northwest High School and Coleraine High School also operate a snack cart 2 days per week, selling snacks to teachers. We also operate our in-school opportunities. We have the Brew House Bakery. We make handcrafted dog bones. We also have the opportunity to go to the Brew House Bakery that makes not only dog bones, but people treats as well, when we have the opportunity to work there. In addition to that experience, our students have the opportunity to go to the University of Cincinnati's Collaboration for Employment and Education Synergy Program. It's the FEES program. They aim to create community-integrated employment experiences that incorporate meaningful social interactions with peers and employers. Students who participate in the program enjoy the opportunity to work alongside peers on a college campus. Not only have our students developed lasting friendships with other high school students from different districts across the city, some have developed lasting friendships with their peer mentors who are UC students. We have a few students here tonight, not only from Coleraine High School, but Northwest High School as well, who participated in the program. Lindsay Tellis, Ralph again, who also participated in the program, Nick Holthouse, and Max Pearson. And they have posters over here. And the teachers who of these students report that the students who have participated on the UC campus demonstrate higher levels of reliability, self-confidence, and self-worth.
If we can have all the students and maybe even their teachers come up towards the cookie area right here, we'll take a group picture and then we'll take another one outside.
And so before we do that though, can we ask a couple questions?
You
If
sure
the board
can,
has
because
questions?
the students are definitely prepared. They had to present their posters at UC 2 weeks ago. So they have their posters over here, and they have practiced interview skills all year long and they are prepared to answer questions about their experience.
Perfect. All right. So could you guys talk about some of the things that you're doing at UC? Maybe what you guys did with your posters?
What did you do at UC?
I worked at Walgreens.
Can you come over here so they can hear you on the TV? Talk right into there. So what were some of the things you did at UC?
I've worked in Walgreens there, but before that, I've had to work in ATS deliveries for UC. I deliver snacks in Starbucks for like $1 for a donation.
And so you're going to school during the day and also working a job on top of that?
Yeah.
Good job.
So Lindsay, correct? So what have you, can you come over and tell us what you do at UC? Or what you do at Colerain High School, what you like the best?
I like the greenhouse, and I love making flowers.
Making flowers, yep.
Making flowers, and working at the library.
At the library, great.
Great job.
That's awesome. Thank you. All right, Joey, come on over. Did you get your shirt from UC?
Yeah.
Looks very nice.
So what's your name?
Ralph.
Ralph. So Ralph, what'd you learn at UC, or what's your favorite thing at Colerain?
Oh, my favorite thing was the snack cart.
So every morning you're delivering snacks and selling them?
Yeah.
What kind of snacks do you have?
We have sun chips, drinks, granola bars, cookies, waters. Probably that's it.
That's awesome. Thank you.
What's the best seller?
What sells the best?
Cookies.
Cookies. Excellent. What's your favorite things about UC or Northwest during the day?
Well, so I worked at the rec center, and where I do there is like I scan people in, like I don't know how many people I scan in a day, but I feel like it's like 100, 1,000 people I do in a day, something like that.
So you enjoy that part?
Yeah.
Good.
How many of you went to do the dog treats? Did you
I
have to?
went.
Well, my dog thanks you. She's going to be very excited tonight when I bring these home to her. So thank you very much.
They've all had the opportunity to craft the treats. Ralph and Nick went to the bakery. Did you go to the bakery, Lindsay? Max, did you? I think Max went to the bakery as well. So both schools have had the opportunity to go to the bakery. The bakery's in Madeira, and there is information and samples if you guys have dogs and would like some samples.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure more than one dog will love these treats very much.
So did part of this group go to Columbus? Mark just brought up a point when we were up there for Capitol Conference. Was that these or another?
No, that was
class?
another group.
Okay.
That was a group from Northwest with Ashley, I think. Yeah.
But part of this class is they also have a membership at the Cincinnati Police Credit Union.
Oh, yes.
And so they do all their banking and depositing their money and their checks there. So that's part of their life skills. They do not have to leave after they turn 18 and graduate. They can stay and continue their training and participation in school. Anything you guys want to add about that, or?
They also support our classroom financially. They do donations to the students. That allows us to buy groceries and items for our classroom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're very lucky. Other schools that I work, I know people that work at other schools, and they don't have that. They don't have that.
And that comes from Cincinnati Police Credit Union? And you guys have banks in your own school, right? Don't you have a bank at Colerain and a bank at Northwest? Yep. You guys go there and make your deposits?
You
That's
know,
awesome.
Todd, I think they did a fundraiser at Northwest, the baked potato bar.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
And it was great. They did a great job at that, and we went over there for lunch with those guys, and it was really fun. They did a good job.
And 3 of these youngsters up here are seniors. Nick, Lindsay, and Max.
I'm
And-
officially leaving. But I'm sad.
But you will be continuing your education where next year? All three of them?
Project Life.
Project, through Butler Tech's Project Life program. They all three interviewed and worked very hard to get into Project Life.
Great.
Great job.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
At this time, we have all of our friends and their families step outside for a group photo. Don't forget your ID because I'll shoot you.
Last time I did Northwest, he told me to bring it to you, but I didn't know if that was an option. That's very cool. I'm gonna see if they get the card. Can I drop it in? Yeah, I want to do it. Coffee.
Okay, ready?
All right, the first agenda item is certified retirements and resignations. Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the certified retirements and resignations as listed.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? Okay. Motion passed 5-0.
Next item is a classified personnel item, classified retirements and resignations. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the classified retirements and resignations as listed.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions on the classified retirements or resignations? Okay. Motion passed 5-0.
Next item is a general business item. It is vendor contracts. Superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education approve the vendor contracts as listed.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any questions on the vendor contracts? Okay. Motion passed 5-0.
Next item is certificated licensed personnel items. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve certificated licensed personnel items as listed.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? Okay. Motion passed 5-0.
Next item is classified personnel. Classified personnel items. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the classified personnel items as listed.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions regarding classified personnel? Okay. Motion passed 5-0.
The next item is for information only. It is proposed student fees for the 2019-2020 school year, elementary, middle school, and high school. Please look them over the next 2 weeks, and if you have any questions, please let me know. We wanted to put them out on the board agenda in case anybody else had questions, but it is just a proposal for fees for the 2019-2020 school year. The next board meeting will go for action item.
Okay.
All right, so at this point, we want to move to our work session. So if you guys want to move out there so you can see the screens. The main purpose of tonight is to have discussions talking about the amount or the millage that will be on the levy. Yeah. We need to determine what the amount will be. So Amy has worked to put a presentation together that we want to share with you that you could ask questions about, get information from. And And it gives you a little bit of idea. It's one thing to talk that we want to put up a 5, 6, 7 mil levy, but it's different to know what it brings to the district, what's the expectation for how long it will last. And our goal is by the end of May to have a resolution going to Hamilton County that will certify the amount of what the levy millage will be. So at this time, yes. It depends.
10, 15
15, 20.
So this evening, I called it part 2. It's going to be an extension of the presentation that I did at the last work session to talk about levy planning as we continue to plan on what type of levy we need, how many mills we need it for, and how long we need it to last. So if you remember, we've seen this slide several times, and as we've talked, it's not a matter of if we need a levy, it's a matter of when we need a levy and how long we need it to last and how much we need to ask for. Typically, our district has been about 10 years. Most suburban schools, and the average in the state, are about every 3 to 5. This slide is just to remind us of the levies that we've passed as a school district and the amount that we're currently collecting, about $44 million, from these levies. Again, levies are flat when passed. They never grow as far as the revenue. Once the levy is passed, the dollar amount on the far right is the exact dollar amount we received when the levy was passed and the amount we received today.
So can I ask a clarifying question for those who are watching? So you said the district passes a levy about every 10 years, but it seems like our renewals are coming up sooner. So it's just getting them to understand that it has, when it originally passed, we're renewing those levies from 2007.
Correct. So the renewal levies, down here on the bottom,
Yep.
2007, 12, and 17. An emergency levy is not a permanent levy. It's one that we have to ask for and then continue to ask to keep. So we've been operating on that $7 million levy since 2007. It was a 5-year levy at the time. We renewed it in 12, again for another 5 years in 2017, and this time it is a 10-year levy, which will come due in 2027, which we'll have to ask the community to again renew. Otherwise, we will lose $7 million that we operate on a daily basis right now.
Thanks.
So this is our October 5-year forecast, and when we've been looking at this trend since 2012, we knew that in 2019, expenditures were going to start exceeding revenue and was going to continue. So we've been making reductions internally, but we've not been able to totally offset the expenditures with our current revenue. So tonight I'd like to also bring to everybody's attention, for those who may not know and for those who already do know, the state determines the financial status of a school district in 3 ways. They look to make sure you're not in fiscal caution, fiscal watch, or fiscal emergency. And with fiscal caution, they're looking to see if you are exceeding, if your expenditures are exceeding your current revenues between 2 and 8%. And right now, our current expenditures are exceeding our current revenues by 6%.
So the $5.1 million is the 6% you're talking about?
Yes, our $5 million deficit that we're currently operating with is exceeding our revenue by $5 million, which is 6% of our operating revenue, which could classify us into fiscal caution. Right now, the state has not put us into fiscal caution because we have our cash balance policy and we have a carryover funds. Fiscal watch is when you're definitely between the 2 and the 8, and the state puts you in fiscal watch, and they need you to start reducing your expenditures right then. And the state can start taking over, they can create committees, they can tell you what you can spend when you start getting into these fiscal situations, so you don't want to get there. And the last is fiscal emergency was the last one, and that is if you're between 10 and 12%, and if you're in fiscal emergency, the states come in, they've got their own committee and board, every expenditure runs through them, they determine how to run your district, and the board's just kind of sitting there. If you are in fiscal watch and you do not pass a levy, they're going to put you into fiscal emergency. So you have to be able to generate more revenue if you start in fiscal caution. Otherwise, you're going to be classified into fiscal watch and then fiscal emergency, as your expenditures continue to exceed your revenues, and compounding just grows that percentage more and more.
It's basically receivership, right? I mean, is it similar to receivership? They take full control?
Similar, yes. And you have to pretty much go down to your basics of education, and you have to be within, your expenditures have to be within your revenue, and your community might have to pass a levy in order to get back even to basics, depending on, if you're 12% expenditures over revenue, it could be devastating to the school district. So our proposal, as we talked about at the last board meeting, was a $6.5 million 7-year emergency levy, which would generate approximately $9 million over the 7 years and would be renewed in 2026, out 7 years. We have additional levies that need renewed in 2026, and that's our out 7 years in 2026. We would need an additional levy to increase revenue again as expenditures continue to increase. And we have an emergency levy that is, as I just mentioned previously, that will come due in 2027. That is that 10-year 2017 emergency levy that will come up for renewal in 2027. So with that, we'd like to think about combining emergency levies, and the state has now allowed schools, because emergency levies are a new funding mechanism, to keep the state dollars coming to the district and yet be able to increase revenue with local levies, is to do a substitute emergency levy, making a prior approved emergency levy a permanent levy, so you don't have to keep going back out every 5 to 10 years to keep what you've already been approved by your community, and then to also ask for additional revenue, because about every 5 to 7 years, we do need to increase our revenue to keep up with expenditures. So tonight I want to show you that without a levy, this is our picture with our projecting out our 5-year forecast for the next 7 years. The red line is our current cash balance. The green line is our cash balance policy. Remember, we have a policy where we want that 60 days of operating expenditures on the books, because we owe obligations at the end of the year for staff who has worked their time, and we owe them. We have obligations to vendors that we haven't paid the invoices yet at year end. We're still waiting for them to come in. And then you also have things like state cuts, recessions, economic conditions, initiatives that we want to implement, things like that you have to have and be able to fall back on. And the purple line is the carryover, which at this point, when the red line is decreasing, so does our carryover. What a 6 mil levy would do, again, the blue line would be the cash balance, the green line is our cash balance policy, and the purple line would be the carryover. The cash balance policy and the cash balance meet at year 7, and actually the cash balance is a little below the cash balance policy, which is why the purple line is dipping below 0. We actually go negative at that point, about $170,000, which doesn't leave us any room for state funding changes, because they're redoing the state biennial budget now, and what they could do 2 more biennial budgets from now. Doesn't leave us any room for needs, our children's needs, as they change. I know our ELL services are growing as students are moving into the district. Our intervention aids are and the needs of students as we're trying to grow their student achievement. And then just as other things happen, we need to be able to react to student needs. At a 6.5 mil levy, the blue line, again, is the cash balance. The green line is our cash balance policy, and the purple line is our carryover. What this allows us to do is have about a little over 1 year's worth of growth on hand, so that way in 7 years, if it's a recession and there's not time and the community's not ready to be able to pass a new levy, we have a year to work with. We also may, with state budgets, again, like I said, they're working on the current biennial budget. There'll be another 2 between now and then. It gives us a little room, because right now, the way it's looking, they're going to decrease the revenue that they're sending to us. We won't know for a fact, so I'm not able to tell you in this forecast, in this presentation, that our state revenue is down. But right now, with the projection, it would go down, so that would help buffer that. And then also, as needs of students change and increase, we would also be able to react to those changes. So we also looked at a 6.25 and what that would do. The difference in 7 years between the blue and the green line is less than 1 year's worth of operating expenditures. So it brings that a little closer. It limits the amount that we're able to do within the 7 years as needs change, as a possible recession. We wouldn't be able to get through another year as the governor's budgets and the state budget changes and the school funding formula changes. So it kind of narrows that. So I also wanted to project out what the different mills would be and what the 6.5 that we are recommending on an annual cost basis, and the valuation of a home. So across the top is the valuation of a house, down the left side is the number of mills, and then across is per year with an average. So we're looking about $400 for an average homeowner for the 7-year levy, and then on a monthly basis about $35. So what would happen if the levy were not to pass in November? Taxes are collected on an annual, a year in arrears. So if it doesn't pass in November, we would be out a whole nother school year before we would start collecting the revenue, which would put us behind. So not only would it not be able to be 7 years or 5 years, whatever we decide, it would have to be 6 years, it would have to be a year less, 6, 4, whatever that number would be. Because we dip below our cash balance policy, we have to build that back up, and we also dip below zero for our actual cash balance and our carryover. So we've waited till the end to be able to ask for revenue, but we can't wait for revenue, because if we do, we're going to go into the negative.
So the key point in what you're predicting there is if the levy does not pass in November, we would have to come back at a higher millage rate, where most people are thinking we'll show them possibly, if we don't support it, that it'll come back at a reduced rate. That's not possible with the way we're on the decline with our funding.
Correct. It would have to go up actually a whole mill. So instead of 6.5 that we're recommending and proposing tonight, it would be at a 7.5, and the number of years, it wouldn't be shifted back out for 7. We would have to shorten the number of years. So the amount of revenue we need in that time period stays the same. We would just have shorter amount of time to collect it, and so that increases the amount we need to collect in a shorter amount of time. So as we discussed last time, we need to have a commitment with our community and a partnership. So we needed to decide the amount of millage, the length of time, and then I gave you a draft resolution tonight of something that it could look like as far as what we are agreeing on our end to increase student achievement, to watch our operations, but then also to make sure that we restrict expenditures to no more than a 3% increase per year, except for negotiated raise increases, because those have to be at the table. But if we cap growth at 3%, and then we would also say it would last a certain amount of time, whatever we come up with within our resolution when passed. So with that, I'd like to start the conversation and thoughts and where we want to go, how many years, how much millage.
I just wanted to know, what does the government recommend we have in reserves? Usually, I mean, like a business, they want you to have 3 years sitting in the bank. How much does and I know you're not allowed to have more than 3 years, I know that, but how much do they recommend you have?
The governmental recommendation is 30 to 90 days. Our cash balance policy is 60.
And do these figures include money in that capital fund for building and doing Colerain Elementary?
No, right now we don't have a fund for co-rate elements. We created the fund, but there's no dollars in it. We need to, no, we need to build up money for that project. Right now, we do not have any funds for that project. This is only general fund, it's current operations, it's salaries and benefits and the services we provide children on a day-to-day basis. It's just to operate the instructional part of the school district.
By joining OFCC and going through ELP, we achieved $17 million in credit. So it's not money that's here. And until once our number comes up, you then have 2 tries at a levy to raise additional funds or have the money for that. But there is no mysterious money sitting in pot. We are finding out that as inflation continues to go, the price is more and more for what it would cost for a Colerain L and Colerain Middle campus. Now, the good thing is enrollment is decreasing at Colerain L and Colerain Middle because of the moves we made. So where we thought we needed a much larger building, we now do not. I think enrollment was 300 different, Chris?
The buildings are so packed, you're not going to get happy people, happy customers. I think at some point you're going to want to move them back to, unless you're predicting lower populations in those schools, because right now that's something they talk about a lot, is how overcrowded they are.
I think-
I'd just like to see us get on strong. I hate when you say emergency, I feel like the community thinks, what did they do wrong? You know, that we did something dastardly wrong, and I'd love to see if there's a mechanism by which we sound strong and we're prepared for the future and we're going to meet the needs instead of behind the 8 ball, just perception-wise.
Well, I think
love the idea of combining these things because it gives the impression we're doing it over and over and over. And so I think that's awesome that they
Right.
guess that law.
And plus, it wears people out. And the reason emergency levies you can pass for 2 reasons. One, you have a project. You need to put a roof on the new high school, several $1 million, that kind of thing. Or to avoid an operating deficit, which is what we're in. We're currently in a $5 million operating deficit. So the emergency levy is to avoid that. But what also, this mechanism, called an emergency levy, versus an operating levy, because we could do either, but the emergency levy gives us additional revenue without reducing the amount the state pays us. To do just a typical operating levy would just shift dollars. So our community would pay more and the state would pay less. So we don't want to shift the dollars, but we do need to generate more revenue. And the state determines what they send us. It's a partnership, and they say, we're going to give they determine what you can afford locally, and then they pay the difference for their share. So once they determine what locally you can afford as your local tax effort, and they look at federal gross income to determine what the community can afford. It's a state-determined number of what our community can afford. And that's 60% of our operations for basic education, and anything above basic, we have to fund locally. And then the state pays the 40% difference for basic education.
And
Sorry.
the problem is, we're working with a 2007 budget, but the kids are bringing different things to the table now and more economically disadvantaged, more issues with drug abuse and things at the home, and it just costs more to educate a kid. And it's hard to not have a raise since 2007, and people will say, well, you have had a raise. We just passed levies in 50. Those were renewals. It was no new money. It was just keeping money we had.
That's what I'm talking about, is the perception in
Yep,
the
yep.
community is we keep coming back, and that's why I like your idea of combining things and let's get everything together. But so with the emergency, so you're using that terminology in order to assure that the state does not reduce their share of what's coming in. If it's titled emergency, you get to use it that way. No?
Right, it's not us just giving it a name, it's the type of levy that our options are, and so we're using that option. And to do a substitute emergency levy, you have to pass it once, and then the second time, so when it's up for renewal, then you can make it a permanent. But, so you still would have to go for emergencies twice, vote for them once, and then bring it back for that first renewal and be able to make them substitutes. So it didn't totally fix the problem, but it definitely, because after a while, if we're every 5-7 years and you have a new emergency, for a while you're out every year just trying to renew what you have, and then when is there time to try to get additional?
Is there a perfect world? I know I'm not on the same level as you guys are up here understanding all this, and I'm down here, but is there a perfect world if you could have your dreams come true and give us financial stability. Is there something you can propose that would give us that stability? I'm not saying we should do it, I'm just saying, is there an alternative? I mean, do you ask for 10 mills, and we know we're good for the next 20 years, and we can do A, B, C, D, all the way to Z? I'm just curious if there's a number that gives you a stability instead of constantly reactive.
No,
think-
because the way the formula is, we couldn't ask for enough to get that far out.
But depending on the millage, we could ask for, so Amy can tell you at 6.5, it will last 7 years. She's on the new funding system, the discussions about that, but going up to a 7.5 and an 8 will definitely extend it to 10, 11, 12 years, and she can figure some of it into your 5-year plan. But the only thing that could complicate that is a new governor, state funding change, enrollment up or down. If you look at our 10-year projection, it's about 100 kids, 200 kids different every year. And it's kind of like this, it's no set thing. But there's no magic millage that you can put out there that guarantees anything just because they change funding so much, unfortunately.
And when there's a recession, the state cuts, and when they cut us. So we have to be able to react and still provide services even without that revenue.
Do you guys have been talking to folks as board members, do you have any comments on what you feel is an appropriate amount for the millage?
Well, I mean, I like the idea that it's going out 7 years, so you're not coming back. Hey, every 2 or 3 years, we need another levy. So we need you to get behind this, and, you know, if you can, you know, when the price was up there, the average amount of $33.18.
Can you go back to that one?
Can you go back to that?
Which
Well,
one,
what-
the 6.5?
We're too far.
Oh,
The one that shows monthly and yearly cost.
oh, yeah.
The next one, where it says 33.18, is that average, that's the average between 100,000 and 250,000, is that where that?
Yes.
So you're looking at, so it's gonna cost a homeowner, on average, 33.18 a month additional on their property taxes. Which, you know, if you look at that, and let's say you don't pass a levy and you don't pass a levy, you know, your most valuable asset that the majority of people in this room have is their house. And when that happens, the value of your house drops. So, you know, I look at it, you know what, it's $33.18 a month for the average homeowner in our district. You know, I would rather pay that $33.18 than have my property value drop by, you know, $4,000 or $5,000, you know, in a year's time or a year and a half time. So, you know, I think people need to look at that, you know, if you don't pass a levy, I mean, I remember when little old Miami did that, and they didn't pass like 7 or 8 levies in a row. They had to put a 16 mil levy up and finally passed, just to get them, but it's just, you know, they were in fiscal emergency, the worst that could happen, and they were run by the state, and, you know, but I think this is, I mean, those figures are doable. I don't think it's that far out of line where people can afford that. If you look at, well, you know, the value of my house might go down $4 or $5 grand if we don't pass a levy in a year and a half. You know, then, you know, so, I mean, it's an investment, obviously, in your most valuable asset that you have, which is your house. For the majority of the people. Yeah, you know, so, I mean, if you can look at it that way, I mean, I think that's something people can understand and, you know, put their hands on those figures. I don't know, that's my opinion on that, so. I mean, you don't want to put a 10 or 11 mil levy and, you know, it'd be way out of line and people can't afford that, but I think that's something that, you know, that's doable. You know, and it takes us out 7 years. So we're not back here in another 2 years or 3 years asking for more money.
Correct, and it also is a partnership with the community.
Right.
If you pass this, we agree for so many years, and then we make it work that long, and then they know we're coming back. It's not surprise, like, oh, here you are again, we've been talking about it this whole time.
Right.
But remember, at a 6.5, at 7 years, this gives us about 1 year of leeway, but it also doesn't, if the state makes cuts
Sure.
If we have additional needs with students, this is just projecting what we currently have. It's keeping us where we are.
Right.
With
But-
the 20 mil in reserves, and not depleting what your. what
Our
your
cash
total
balance
reserve.
policy.
Yes, ma'am.
But I think what you just said is key, though. This is with no changes by the state or no decreased enrollment. We're staying as we are. And I think it goes back to what Carrie was asking, is there's something that gets us everything we want. I don't think I mean, we're 8,200 per student. The state average is 9,200 per student. Our kids, our community deserves the best education for their students.
We're $1,000 under what the state average.
Correct.
That the state pays for.
And I think people need to understand that we are, when I was looking at some numbers last night, we are really not shining as far as the generosity of the community with our school district. If you compare it to the districts we want to be like, then that really truly means you need to pony up a little bit.
Yeah, they spend more money, you know, for their kids in their particular district.
I'd rather see, but I'm nobody. Remember, I'm a novice in this field. But I'd rather see it be higher, feel stable, and be positive about it with the direction we're going into than skirt and, skate by.
Right now,
I agree with Carrie. I think the worst thing we could do is not ask for enough. And then, just look at the last couple of years. We had the state come back and take over $1 million away from us for transportation. We had no way of knowing they were going to do that. Every year there's some unfunded mandates. So if this is just getting us by, that's saying the state's not going to do one thing to us in the next 7 years. I don't think
and
that's very
you could
likely.
address that too, Pam, with instead of 7, going to 5, and guaranteeing to the community 5, and then if we get to 7, even better. I mean, we've made the last time 12 versus.
Say that again?
Instead of having a commitment that it would last 7 years, commit that it would 5. And then if we can make it last 7, because the state doesn't make drastic changes or the needs of students don't drastically change and we have to add services to meet their needs. I mean, the things that drive expenditures or reduce revenue. And if we can make it last longer, it's even better. But if we have a commitment and a resolution and partnership that it'll last 7, and then things like that happen, then we're making cuts to keep it, to get to 7. Or we're having conversations with our community. This is what's happened. We promised 7. We're struggling with that. We either have to cut and reduce, or you can do less years. Just throwing out options. Nothing is set. You guys haven't decided on anything, so right now is the time to decide. Is 7 too long, 7 too short, 6.5 not enough, too much?
I mean, obviously, nobody wants their property taxes to go up, but
I mean, you have to take that into account though, also.
But yeah, if you have to be offering them something. People do
this is
understand
keeping
value.
things the same. This isn't
Yeah,
offering
and that's what I'm
anything.
saying. It would, at 6.5, if that's just gonna be survival, what's that feel like to live in a community where we're hanging on by a thread? But don't listen to me, don't let me, but I would rather be in a stable community, in a stable school district that is meeting the needs of our kids instead of fighting for it. And I like the number 7. I like 7 years, 7 mil, lucky 7. We are at the point now, these things expired, instead of presenting as we're behind the 8 ball, the thing is, we're going to combine all this crapola that you guys have to look at, and we're going to put it all into one. I bet it's 7 things. We're going to put it all into one. And we are projecting for our future instead of what's behind us. So we're going to get rid of all this crapola every couple of years, go for the 7, get rid of 7. But that's my perspective. But I would just like to see you guys ahead and people looking at what we're going to get. And then we need to have a real good talk about what are we going to give them for this? How are we going to make this valuable to them? We have some things we can build on. I've seen even in the report card, I see things we can build on that are positive. But let's find out what we can give them in return for this investment.
And that has been some of the comments from the parents also. Don't show me what 5 mils, 6 mils, 7 mils cost. Show me what it gets for my kid. And it's been difficult to continue to increase test scores and increase student achievement when you're making cuts every year because state funding is changing. And when you're living on a 2007 price trying to educate in 2019, it becomes more difficult. So a 6.5 or 7 mil levy does get us to the point where our kids can get, and I would bet even a 7 mil levy won't put us above the state average. So
Currently, just based on this, what we receive, currently on the 60-40 split for basic education, our community is supposed to pay us $4,000 per student, they pay $3,000. So right now, our community is not even paying for basic education. And when the state calculates our local effort is at 67%, and the state average is 100%. That communities are supporting their public education at 100%, and here in our Northwest District, it's 67% is the tax effort from the community.
Well, that's not what I think I remember
That's
reading
not-
last night, but it's over my head, so I must not have understood it. But we
Okay,
are
we
in
can
the
talk.
lower quadrant as far as when they had it read. This is what I see in my mind from reading last night. And you put the expenditures, we were down here in the very lower corner. There were some here actually below us, but the rest were around here on the outside of it. So, but that's my perspective on it is, I want it to be positive.
Mark, Diane, Joe, anything?
Well, it comes to me, it's money in, money out. And I think we can talk like what we need. It's changing the perception of what people want to believe about what we do with our money, and I think that's the lift here. And, you know, I don't know if we put a 5 up, I don't know if that would change their mind, or a 4 or a 3. They're against, from what I'm hearing, it's more oppositional with anything. So I think that's the lift. I mean, I think we ask for what we need, and then the work comes into the perception change.
And the communication.
Yeah.
And the people who are going to vote no are going, you know, that are hard, fast no, you can't really even consider them because they're not going to vote yes no matter what. Their attitude is, I don't care what you're going to do, I'm not voting for this. And so what we need to look for, and then you've got those people who will vote for it no matter what. You guys could be screwing up royally, and they're still going to vote for you. So what we got to target is people in the middle, you know, from those two sides, and make them feel good about supporting it. I don't think when you talk 6.5 mil, you're just putting in another syllable in there. I don't think it makes any difference between a 6 and a 7. I don't think anybody even looks at the numbers unless it is a financially drastic amount. But like I said, if you, I mean, even if you look at the 7, you say 35, and it's now, are we at 30 now, ma'am?
It was
No, we're-
33.18 compared to 35.73, so
And so, but we gotta
you're
just
talking
set,
$1.50 more?
we got to
per
make
month?
them feel
Or, I'm sorry,
they're gonna
$2.
get $2.50
$2.50
more. That's what we gotta sell them, is for that $2.50, we're going to give you this. And this is going to be so much better than what we've got. You know, that's how you sell it, I think. But I don't know nothing. I just lost my election really bad, so I know nothing about marketing. You know, but that's just the perspective I have.
Are there any statistics as far as like historically, these are the percent odds of passing one, not passing one at certain levels, or do we have any data that we can pull from?
For our district
Or
or schools in general?
maybe Fairfield or somebody that we've been rated similar to that, similar to our district?
The only things that I've seen come from the state are renewals pass at a much higher percentage than emergencies. But it all depends on the economy at the time when something goes out. Right now, the economy's doing pretty well. Housing market's on fire.
I think it's gonna be all about, I think you guys can do it if you give them what they want, the things that are.
Put out, this is what, if we pass this levy, this is what we could do.
Yes, sir.
If we don't pass this levy, this is what we're gonna lose. I mean, I think you need to put it out in black and white and say, okay, what do you want? You know, if the levy doesn't pass, I'm telling you, here's your house, your house value is gonna drop. It will drop when you don't pass a levy.
To add services, we have to be above 6.5.
For the cost of 6 Starbucks coffees per month.
Depending on which one you get, it could be less.
It could be less.
Well, the important thing for starters is everybody needs to be behind it. So it's important that the board's unanimous. So kind of got to get a feel for, like, Joe, what's your thoughts? Diane, what's your thoughts on this? Is everybody's voice, and we need to hear.
So for me, I'm a member of the community, lived here for about 20 years, but I'm very frugal when it comes to this side. When I first started, I've asked a lot of questions and went through a lot of information, so I've got a chance to get an understanding of how the money is being spent in the district. And with my frugal background, I am comfortable with how they've been using the funds. But I'm also that person that supports the levy because I recognize, as Jim mentions, that not supporting the levy doesn't frighten our children what it does to my property value. So I was already in that mindset. So for spending, this per month, so, $340 per year, I could be losing $4,000. It's better for me to spend the $400 than losing $4,000 or more. It could be, who knows the value. So I was already in that mindset of it was more beneficial for me as a member of the community to support the district and the school than it was to not. So that's why.
And Diane, you've been on the board since?
October.
So in that short time, and most of our citizens are not here, not this close to the information, and you just said you feel like as you've been asking the questions and digging into the information that you feel more comfortable with what we're using it for. So I think that speaks volumes right there.
I came in as a very skeptical person, said there has to be some money flowing out some kind of way that was not to my ethics, and I'll put it at a personal level, but I did not find that. And with the more information, the more questions I asked, the more assured I was that the money was being used fiscally responsible. So that's just my take on it.
I think that's huge because a lot of our community and a lot of the responses that we get, the first thing is about expenditures and we need to cut, it's wasteful, throwing good money after bad. I mean, a lot of that theme. So that's why I asked the question, because I think that's.
What people talk about a lot right now is they say the administration is top heavy. And when I was reviewing the numbers last night and the night before and the night before, we are top heavy compared to some of our peers. And I think that's going to be one of the big things for you guys to make sure people understand is that this money is not going to be, it's going to be classroom money, not just, it's not going to go to administration and we need to actually, I would recommend you fix that disparity so that we are at least at the state average as far as administrative costs and classroom costs, because I think that makes us look bad in the eyes of the public. And then that report comes out and it says that right there, and it's like, it validates any negativity that people feel. So I think that would be an area to work on, is making that number better.
I just want to say something about what Jim said, that we don't pass it, this is what's going to happen. If we do pass this is what's going to happen. But I think there should be a third category here, and this has been emphasized by Carrie here, the myths. Where's this money going? Because that's, I get this all the time. You guys are overspending here. Look at the salaries of the administrative offices. And I'm not going to pay for that. And I've got, I'm not making excuses. I'm just listening to that. But there are some concerns out there of people on the fence that would probably vote for the levy, but you have to, resolve these myths that are in the community right now, especially in Green Township.
Right, I agree with that, but they are myths, because I guarantee you put our school district up against any other school district with the same amount of kids that we have in our district, and our administrators, we have less administrators than these other schools. Is that true, false?
We've already presented twice, and and shown that that is true. Oak Hills, Three Rivers, Harrison, Southwest, all those. If you compare amount of students, amount of employees, we are the lowest by far. with administration.
And people need to hear that where, when they say, oh, you're top heavy. Well, no, we're not top heavy. Here's 10 school districts that are our same size, and we have quite a bit less administrators in our district, and I think that kind of info needs to get out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that needs to get out there.
Well, if I'm a researcher, and if I'm misconstruing the data, because I'm telling you, that's what I read, and is that we are not on par with others, that there was a pretty good imbalance. Actually, it was only 3%, but that if anybody looks at a chart and says, oh, there we are, our student spending is here, you know what I mean? It gives the impression that it's big, but it was about a 3% difference between, I believe it was the average spent by the state for administrative cost and the classroom cost comparison. But maybe I'm remembering wrong.
Maybe I can find that.
And that's also not just administrators, it's also paper in the office, folders, it's anything, the OPs in the office, it's anything that's coded as an administrative code and not in the classroom.
We need to, like you said, we need to, where people like me are misconstruing data, we need to fix that problem before.
We just need to get it out there. We just need to get the information out there. And I think that just, and I know, being on the Butler Tech Board, dealing with 10 other school districts on a daily basis, I know how many administrators Fairfield has. They have a hell of a lot more administrators than we do, and they're about the same size. In the other school districts that are similar, I know where we have less administrators. So that is a myth that, I don't know where it got started, but I just think people just say that, I don't want to raise my taxes, you guys are too top heavy. It's too easy to say that and not back it up with the numbers. Okay, here's how many administrators we have for 9,000 kids. Okay, here's the other 10 school districts with 9,000 kids. How many administrators do they have? Every one of those districts have more than we do. So how could you be top heavy when it's right there in black and white?
I think it's also reiterating what Amy said, that it's not, that number you were looking at was not administrator cost, it was administrative cost.
Yes.
And a lot more goes into that pot, that calculation, than just the actual administrators of the district.
Well, and we're spending $1,000 less per kid to educate the kids in our district than the state average. So, I don't know, I don't want to say we're getting good bang for our buck, but, we're spending $1,000 less per kid, times 9,000 kids.
Back to the administrator, there is a chart that you put together, I saw you presented here, that shows a cross-section of where Northwest School District is amongst the others. It's readily available. I know as far as the perception, that it's been asked, several times as far as like a straight out org chart, and that seems to be a ghost as far as like who reports to you, and so you can actually see the numbers. But the numbers on the sheet, yes, I've seen that. But who goes to what? That seems to be a mystery. So
I get that too.
yeah, if you can start with the numbers, and but since information has been kind of slow to come out when it's been requested, that may be why there's the perception that you have these top heavy because you're not willing to share it.
Wonder too if we might be dealing with what's publicly available versus what certain small groups of people have seen or received just because of our reach. What Carrie's talking about is the average spent on administrative costs, and that's publicly available. The chart you put together has got to a small audience, and it's not something people could easily discern from any public source because you know how difficult it was to figure out different job titles and who's doing what. So I think that maybe some conversation about addressing data that's out there in the public and Ms. rather than, it's just the conversation Jim, you're framing as number of administrators. She's talking administrative costs, which includes administrators and everything else that's coded that way. I think there's a need for us to be responding to what anybody who wants to go and put the time in to look at is able to access.
Amy, what do you feel most comfortable with as the CFO of Northwest Local? Like, what do you think is the best comfortable number to go after? With not looking at the barriers, myths, like what would you think?
Mills? I am concerned about 6.5 mills in that I know we have needs that we still need to address that we haven't addressed. We have students with a lot of needs, and 7 years is a long time. And in the current Cup-Patterson proposal, they take our current forecast, which in 5 years we were a positive, had $1 million, and in their proposal we're negative $3 million. So, I mean, that's a huge shift. That worries me. If this was 6.5 at 5 years, and it gave us a little cushion for what the state does, and still be able to hold up to our end with the community and have that partnership, I'd be a little more comfortable. 7, maybe at 7 years, just so you're increasing the amount of revenue as you're extending the years out. The 6.5 just keeps us where we are today. It doesn't give us anything additional, and it doesn't help if the state takes something away. And that's what worries me, because the state is always reducing, and our kids we have needs.
Clearly, this is going to be a lot of work. And I would hate to put all this work into it to just break even.
Right.
I mean, that is to me not acceptable.
It's almost dishonest.
And I think when you talk as far as statistics or probabilities, I don't know if we do just enough or say we go to 7, it's going to be that much more difficult to pass a 7 versus a 6.5. So I mean, if you're going to put the work into it, then ask for what you need.
You know, like you said, you go from a 6.5 to a 7, you're talking $2.50 additional a month.
That's what you have to advertise and market.
That right there, you know, is it worth our 9,000 kids to spend another $2.50 a month to educate them, to give them something extra? Absolutely it is, in my eyes. I mean, I'm the guy that will vote yes on, whatever the levy is. I'll vote yes on it. I'm the 40% that are yes, 40% are no. It's the 20% in the middle you gotta get.
And one of the things we could put out that's important to what she's addressing is 6.5 keeps us as is. So let's say there are cuts from the state. With the 7, we can continue to have CCP, AP, gifted services, counseling services, and on and on. So we can add those things and continue to enhance those for our students as we move forward. At a 6.5, there's a chance that we're just maintaining the staffing plan that Daryl put together. And if there's any reductions, then we're back in scramble mode again, which we don't want to be.
And that's kind of like where I'm at right now. I think we ask for what we want. If that doesn't fly, then we have to kind of go into recovery mode.
And then that tells the community, so let's say you ask for what you want and it goes down, then that's when it's like, okay, well, then we have this emergency and now, I think it sets you up for the next one also, is what I'm saying, if you need another one.
But remember, if you have to go back, it has to be higher in order to make up for the difference. It's going to be a shorter amount of time. And so either you're going back still at 7 and 7.25 or 7.5.
And that just keeps us
7.5 is what you need to be where you at just to maintain.
Right.
So now you can't even, and it's less time. It's not 7, it's
Right.
6. You got to make up that money.
I don't think we even consider 6.5. We said this is a lot of work, and you want to know that you're at least going to be able to provide more, not just the same, stay status quo. I mean,
Well, without having a list of, these are the needs that we need to add. All I have is what we currently do. And our history was 10 years, so I was trying to get what we currently do. 3% growth is about, trend of what's been happening for many years. So if I projected that out, I was trying to get to 10 years, and what would that mill be? I couldn't get to 10. To get to 10 would even be even higher, so I was, okay, so 7 and 6.5, and that just kept us where we are, because that's the numbers I have. If we need to add, that number has to be higher.
I mean, we could always, if we can really think that that 7's gonna make or break, and I don't necessarily know that I think that either. I like you said, you know, we've always heard the statistics. I agree, there's a certain percentage out there that are gonna vote no matter what it is, and there's gonna be that percentage that's always gonna support the levy for whatever reason, property values, the value of education, et cetera. It's that in the middle. But I mean, you could, you know, always do 6.99 just to psychologically, it'd stay under 7, but I wouldn't recommend the 6.5 at all. I think the general public understands. I honestly don't. I don't either. I'd rather ask for more than.
Listen, I want my most valuable asset, my house, I want it to hold its value. I don't want to, you know, not pass a levy in November, we go back May, we can't pass one, and my value of my house drops $10,000, where I could have paid $500 additional property taxes and I would still have another $10,000. I mean, it's crazy to not do that. I mean, I just think people need to look at it as an asset, I mean, for the community.
You're investing in the future, which is our kids.
Yeah.
And you're investing in your own
Exactly.
property, which is
Look,
your
I don't
kids.
have, my kids are grown, I don't have kids in the district anymore, but I see how valuable an education is, and a good education. Not one that you have to cut, you know, we're gonna cut this, or we're gonna cut that. I mean, that's not gonna do anything for the kids.
Remember, we were in cutting mode for so long and we cut so deep that we haven't even recovered from that. And it's also affected student achievement, and our students are behind. And so in order to get them caught up, we have to have additional services
Right.
to help get them caught up. Well, those additional services cost additional revenue, you know, more money. So we have to have that revenue to get them caught up.
When do you gotta make your decision on how much?
We were going to have the forecast meeting at the end of May. We have one more work session, May 6th, May 23rd board meeting. We were going to do the forecast with a projection of, and then do the resolution of necessity that night.
Because I'd really like to see what it would take to get us at least to what the average is in the state. As far as classroom you know, the classroom expenses in educating. What would it take to get us there?
Okay.
Does my question even make sense?
No, we can look at that, yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean.
I just feel like we're still, you know, doing the backstroke when we should be floating.
But you're right, we
I would
are.
like to see that in my community. I'd like to see things better and be on that level. I don't know if it's possible.
Proactive and ahead of things than always trying to be behind and
Always
trying to
playing
make do.
catch-up.
Always
Yeah.
playing catch up. I think we need to change that entire perception.
I almost think that's 7. We're still keeping ourselves
7.
there. Because that is saying the state in 7 years' time is not gonna take any money away from us. I mean,
Is that true? Is that true what she just said? The state, the 7% is going to give us a buffer when they cut some more money since we keep letting them do that?
no, I'm saying if it, no, I'm saying that the 7%, the 7 mil, to me, isn't even really enough, because realistically, the thought of the state not taking any money away from us, unfunded Band-Aids or cutting more on transportation or whatever, all it would take is one of two of those things to happen again, and we wouldn't, I mean, we wouldn't have any extra money again.
Right, because that was $1 million a year. If 7 years, that's $7 million. $500,000 is not $7 million over 7 years.
What millage do you think would be to get it to the state average?
To get to 92? Well, that's an extra $1,000 per pupil, which is $9 million, which is over 6.
You know, you gotta be careful though, you don't wanna put it too high where people are gonna look at it and say,
I can't do
Right,
that.
and you also can't make up
you can't make up
what's
what
been
you've
done
lost.
over the last 30 years.
No, you're not gonna be able to make up, but we gotta be able to do something to like you say, have AP, have CCP. You know, at 6.5, you know, we're not doing that, but if we do a 7 mil, we can offer this and show them, okay, what are the kids doing with those things? What are they doing?
I mean, and we're already having to address that because we're looking at these AP classes, which is nice to offer, but when they're sitting with 6 and 8 kids, how do you justify offering that when the state keeps making reductions and we're getting down to basic education? So AP goes away, CCP will stay, but the state, another new thing they wanted to start and put out there, but there was no additional funds that came with it, yet we're responsible for a lot of the cost. And so those things continue to add up and continue to be an expense, so. So what we can do is gather the information that you guys have asked about. I don't know if we can ever get to that state average though, because that's a lot of mills, but we can show you what 7, 7.5, and 8 looks like. But again, then you're getting close to what will people accept. And that's the things you got to bounce around, talk to your buddies, talk to people, and anywhere from 6.5, 7 to 7.5 is probably your window.
I think that would be a good thing to show people, is like, this is what it would take just to get us average. I mean, I think that's important to know.
And do we want to be average? I'm just asking.
I mean, no, I'm just saying the average.
Say to them, you want to be below average? Is this a below average community? Because you're going to get what you expect and what you pay for, you know?
Yeah, I'm not saying we asked for that, I'm just saying
No, I know
it's just a
To
marker
show it.
to
So
say,
on the May 6th work session, what's the state average? What would it take to get there?
You mean per pupil, what we're spending?
Yeah. And then
And let's
what,
get feedback on it. Get those numbers together and let's get some feedback. Let's start floating the idea and saying, this is what we want. Let them be a part of contributing to the decisions.
Yeah, we have surveys that will go out to our staff and in the community that we can gather information from. And we can put your monthly cost here and some things and ask for their feedback and get input and provide to you guys by the time we make our final decision.
I'd say the 7.25, 7.50, and whatever gets us to the state average, just so we can see it. I mean, I have no
Just to
idea, is that
see it.
9, is that 8, is that, I mean, I don't even know how to calculate that.
What do we got? We got a 20, we got
That on
20
my head.
mil floor or something, right? That's the minimum.
That's the minimum that a property owner has to pay for their public schools.
And see, like I said, my memory is that from reading the numbers, we aren't contributing,
Right now, we collect 29.
and the maximum was what?
The maximum as high as your community will vote for. But that
I
29,
can't get it to pull up, it's,
but the 29 is what they're paying. The collected mills, the 24 plus the 5, the 29, that's what they're paying. But when that's calculated, we still only receive 3,000 per student, and per the formula, we should be getting 4,000 per student for basic education. So we're already underfunded $9 million, and costs go up.
And the cause of this is the community has not been willing to go for higher levy amounts, and so it's put us in this deficit. I don't think we've ever passed one over 5 in the last 10 years.
I don't think we've, no, have we?
No, just renewals. We reduced though.
Only 5.5,
Yeah.
5.4.
Nobody's ever dared to do it.
Some believe
We,
don't go.
but we have to come, how quickly, if we really went for it, and I'm not saying we should, because there's a lot that would have to be ironed out, but if we really went for pursuing mediocrity, frankly, then how, and if it bombs, how quick can we come back and ask for another levy?
May.
But you don't start getting,
But then we don't collect to the next year.
Yep.
which
And
is
that's
what
why it would
puts us
have to go
behind.
to a 7.5 or 8.
Then people would say, oh shit, we get to do this on the services, and say, this is what it feels like, you guys. Is this what you want? And then go to the May with your backup plan if it goes down in flames. And I'm not saying do this to people, you know, I'm just saying that people have to feel it. And they have to feel the difference. And mediocrity. We're functioning financially below mediocrity. No darn reason, no wonder our report card is where it is. We're functioning where we're paying. You know, and if we want to bring the report card up, we have to pay what others are paying to have that report card. That's the way I would be looking at it.
I'm gonna say two quick things. I'm sitting here listening to all this, and I've lived here most of my life also, like some other people in the room. It's not, we're gonna be asking people to work awful hard, making calls, sending letters and all that. It's not real inspiring to say, let's go out at 6.5, do all this work just so we can stay where we're at. I mean, that's not a real inspiring message for anybody. And then second, at some point, I think, I'm sitting here looking at numbers and hear all this. If you're asking for the higher number, which I think it sounds like most people in the room would agree with that, there still has to be an element of what is it? If I'm a parent, you know, my kids are graduating from here and on, but if I'm a current parent, it's going to be okay. Fine, I'll give you the 7.5 or whatever the number ends up being. The question is going to be asked, what is that going to get me? We're all talking numbers here. There's still going to have to be some evidence of what's that going to get me. I'll do the 7.5. I'll pay the extra $30 a month or $40 a month, but I need to see what that's going to get me.
Yeah, I think that needs to get out there. Okay, if we're gonna do a 7 mil or 7.25, what is this gonna get me? I wanna know additionally what that's gonna do for the kids of this district compared to the 6.5, where we're status quo. We're just staying level. We're not increasing or doing anything for the kids than what we're doing right now today. You know, what are we getting for that? And spell it out to people. Okay, this is what you get. You know, and if it doesn't pass, we're going to have to cut. If the levy doesn't pass, we're going to have to cut services, and people are not going to want to see that. You know, you know, and I don't know what the cuts will be, but if you got to cut $5 million, you're going to cut a lot of stuff from this district.
Well, and remember, it compounds, so it's 5 million this year.
I know it compounds, and I just, that's the thing, you know, then you start to see community members move out, you know.
And also, remember, we're a service industry, so when you're cutting,
then your house
you're
is
cutting
dropping
people.
15 or 20 grand.
Which, we've reduced personnel.
We can't reduce much more, I mean.
We're already at minimum.
You know, and that's why I always say, you know, this is showing what you're gonna lose if you don't pay it. It's not a threat, it's just, this is the way it is.
But you do have to present to the public, because, not just, absolutely, but you have to have a little bit of mea culpa in there.
Sure.
Say, this is, we put a committee together, and we're gonna sit down, and we're going to go through this with a fine-tooth comb. And this is what we found. We should not have done this. This was not a good idea. We're going to do this part better. We're going to do these funds over here. You have to be able to self-reflect to show, you know, that what direction you're going in. And so you need to start thinking about those things too. What is the problems? What can we fix? Because I'm sure there's something, you know, I'm sure we can find some things that we can do better on.
All right, I think we've got it. We'll get some information out for sure, and then I'll try to get you as many answers as I can when we have our meeting. We'll get that.
And also take a look at the draft resolution
Yes, sir.
as a potential that, I'd like to be able to present that to the board also on the 23rd, once
Yeah,
we
did you guys,
take action for a levy, to be able to have that partnership behind it.
so the draft resolution is a partnership with the community. If you guys could look that over, give us feedback. I think it's a great idea because it just shows your faith, or our faith, or earning their trust that it will last.
Thank you.
Oh, they don't listen to me.
Wait.
They don't listen to me.
Tim and Carrie on the levy committee, they're gonna be good.
They're not going to ever do that. I mean, Greg won't even put it up, he won't even motion, he won't even put a motion. I say, stop telling me what you'd like to do, make a damn motion and let them sink or swim on it. You know, let them have the opportunity to vote no. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were done. I was-
Oh, we got to check out, you're fine.
We just have to adjourn.
I get the second.
We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Come on, Chris. What have you been doing up here? Where's that clock?
Motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned.